Hello there gorgeous gamers and welcome back to Pure Play TV, and we've got another review for you. This one is for Anodyne 2, Return to Dust, and it's a new release for PS4 and Nintendo Switch. Though, as this review comes from our network site, Pure PlayStation, we're basing this review on the game running on PS5 via backwards compatibility mode. I've never played the original Anodyne. I swear I've thought about it like a million times, but I've never pulled the trigger. It was the box art that always drew me to the game because it reminds me of how much I loved the original Zelda and Dragon Warrior back in the day. Thankfully, the developers insist that you don't need to play the first game to enjoy this one. They share similar themes and concepts but feature new characters and standalone stories. You can play them in any order, or you can skip the original entirely. I will probably play the original someday because I enjoyed most of my time in Anodyne 2, Return to Dust, and the first game is on PS Now, so it's an easy one to do. The original was a top-down 2D game that played a bit like the original Zelda on the NES. Anodyne 2 took the first of many big swings by combining elements of 2D and 3D gameplay. You'll start out in a 3D world with heavy N64 and PS1 vibes. There is a platforming feel to these sections that you will instantly recognise from that era, complete with double jumping, holding the cross button to glide on the descent, and at times, a wonky camera. The low resolution and low poly textures of that time are, quite frankly, hard on my eyes. It's meant to invoke a PS1 feel, and it nails it. But for me, personally, that is the ugliest era in video games. Many others love it and will love how well Anodyne recreated that feel, and that's good for them. On the other hand, the 2D portion of Anodyne 2 was my favourite part of the game. The 3D portion of the world is basically the overworld, while the 2D sections are considered the game's dungeons. The Zelda-inspired dungeons aren't really dungeons at all, actually. Each one is completely unique and bound by a distinct and usually odd as hell theme and colour palette. From winter-themed dungeons with angry snowball-throwing snowmen, or fire-themed industrial-style levels, and even a 50s-style diner theme. If you think that's weird, wait until you get into the wrestling ring, or run a delivery service at an apartment building, or save a princess for an ancient kingdom. All very familiar then. Each of these featured a satisfying boss battle at the end and some puzzles that weren't too hard but were always fun to solve. The story is deep, emotional, confusing, but most of all, it's weird. For instance, the first thing that you need to do is search through your first 3 dungeons to gather ingredients for what is basically a bowl of cereal. You play as Nova, a young girl who must rid the land of nanodust with her trusty vacuum. You'll travel the overworld. Did I mention you can also turn yourself into a car? That's important. Until you find someone who needs your help. You then shrink down and enter a dungeon that represents their body via a strange rhythm minigame. Once inside that person, you'll use your vacuum to suck out all of the dust and eventually defeat a boss. Doing so, you will collect cards that you can use to build a prism in the centre of the city, where you can store all of your dust. You'll need to continue to collect the cards so that your prism is large enough to store all of the dust, because this world is an absolute mess. The game's story is told via on-screen text, including the classic RPG trope of adding an insane amount of ellipsis to every piece of dialogue. I first thought that maybe some voice acting could have solved some of the story confusion, but honestly, I think the story is strange just for strangeness' sake, and I'm okay with that. I grew to care about Nova anyway, and the world she is trying to save. The one thing that was obvious about Anodyne 2 is that Nova and most of the people of her world are hurting deeply, and these days that's quite easy to relate to. And let's face it, the world could use a good deep cleaning. You'll need between 7 and 10 hours to complete the story of Nova and the nano dust, maybe more if you want to truly understand what's going on. The good news is that you can play and truly enjoy the game even if the story doesn't grab you. I think the relatively short runtime is a good thing in that regard, but for people who really connect with the story or just want to remain in the bizarre world, they do introduce some collectible coins you can search for after you finish the story. While Anodyne 2 Return to Dust won't be for everyone, what is? It's the kind of game a certain type of person will absolutely devour. The familiar and retro graphics, paired with an old school music score and some tasty chiptunes, will definitely press some nostalgia buttons, but this is way more than a simple trip down memory lane. It was a hell of a ride, to be honest. I just wish I could remember how I got here. And that's the end of this review. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, go down below, hit the like and subscribe buttons. It does us a massive favour. And also hit the bell icon so that you're notified whenever we've got new stuff. Go on down below to the description for our links to our social media channels, websites and our supporters page, where you can support our small team if you can. I've been Chris, you've been gorgeous, I'll see you next time. Until then, bye bye.